Mark here at Whiskey Whistle, a whiskey archive, an archive of all the whiskey you have tried and loved. Find out why you should make yourself a whiskey archive and how to make one here on the Whiskey Archive tutorial on Whiskey Whistle. Hey everyone, I'm Mark, the host of Whiskey Whistle, your wise choice in independent whiskey and spirits reviews, bringing you a whiskey tutorial on Whiskey Archives. Why you should be making your whiskey archive and how to make one. Now, before we get started with the Whiskey Archive, I'd like to give a quick shout out to all the YouTube subscribers. We're getting close to 1,700 subscribers here. That's amazing. Another quick shout out to the number one, the very first subscriber, Frederick Reinink. Hey Fred, how are you doing? And also to the brand new Patreon patrons. There's 5 of them now. Get involved with Whiskey Whistle on Patreon. There's a newsletter coming out for April and every month thereafter, so make sure you get that by joining up. Alright, well let's get on to the Whiskey Archives, shall we? Now this is my project that started pretty much the same time that I started the YouTube channel, so approximately 3 years ago. And so far, from what I've bottled, I still have lots yet to bottle into these mini glass little vial bottles. Anyway, so far I've got one full box here that's probably got about roughly 30, 50 milliliter bottles, so about 1.5 liters in there. Then I've got an as yet unboxed sort of a shopping bag full of these as well, and there's another good 1.5 liters in there. Now, what's the point here? Why am I doing this? Well, one reason is it's a way to preserve your whiskey. Whiskey, of course, in the bottle will last indefinitely, provided that you keep the cover on, provided that you keep it out of light. Even in the light, it'll just lose its flavor, but it'll always be potable. It'll always be drinkable. However, the taste will change. It'll worsen. You'll lose alcohol, and eventually, after a long period of time, it'll be gone. Now, what I do, I pour the last little bit of my bottles, sometimes the first little bit if I really prefer the taste of the beginning of the bottle, because there's a little bit of a difference. Anyway, I'll pour 50 milliliters up to 200 milliliters of that whiskey into these little vials to save for the future. Now, once you've poured them into a screw top glass or perhaps a plastic bottle, it's pretty much going to last indefinitely. A screw top is always much more secure than a cork, in fact. Cork, well, they breathe a little bit, they break, so they're an inferior closure. Screw top, however, pretty near perfect. And if I really wanted to, I could wrap that in paraffin wax and then it would last hundreds of years. Alright, now I'm sure you're curious, aren't you? Well, let's delve into the Whiskey Whistle Whisky Archives, Volume 1. Alright, let's get her opened. Now, this is actually a makeshift archive. What I plan to do is to build a little wooden chest, a little wooden box with spaces for all of these. So just let me get that open. There we are. As I mentioned, this goes right back to the beginning of Whiskey Whistle, so that's pretty cool. I know that I've got Crag and Moore over here and Talwini here as well. Not just single malts, I've also got some bourbons. Here we have, is that it? Yes, it is. Oh boy. So that's Knob Creek, the 9-year-old 120 proof, the original. I think they don't make that anymore, do they? Foodquig. Hi, Foodquig. Andy, you just reviewed this one recently. I did quite a long time ago. This is Jura Boutique Barrels, 1993 J.I. Sherry. Sherry finish, sherry cask. Anyway, very lovely whiskey. I can't wait to revisit that. Well, let me just talk about that for a minute. So here I've got whiskey that I would have bought probably around October of 2015, maybe a bit earlier than that, in fact. And it was a kind of a one-off bottle sitting here on a shelf in South Korea, Seoul, South Korea. Now, I'm from Canada. Of course, most of my subscribers know that. Winnipeg, in fact. However, I live here in Seoul, South Korea right now. Anyway, so bought that, enjoyed the bottle. It took me a long time to warm up to it because I had never really experienced sherry matured whiskey before. Anyway, so that's going to be really fun to go back into this at some point in the future to try that again and compare it to my original notes and my original Whiskey Whistle review. Alright, so that's the Jura Boutique Barrels. Jura, by the way, boy, they're releasing all new lineup for Jura. So that's great. Now, sorry about the noise. That's a bit noisy rustling this plastic around. There's one more that I wanted to talk about, and that is right here. Here we are. All right. Now, again, it's not just, bourbons and single malts. What about blended Scotch whiskies? What about Canadian whiskies? How about Indonesian? Well, I don't think there's any Indonesian yet, but there probably will be soon. How about Taiwanese or Japanese? Any of these would make a wonderful addition to your own whiskey archives. Now, I'm going to revisit Cutty Sark Prohibition. It's been a long time, and this is a blended Scotch whiskey that pretty much really got me into blended Scotch whiskeys. All right, well, let's go back in time. Well, back in time for me anyway, back 2.5 years to when I tried Cutty Sark Prohibition for the first time. That was in Chicago, in fact, in October 2015. Just a little bit. This is 50% ABV, and I highly recommend it. Put that there for now. What I love about this whiskey is that it's unchill filtered, and it's 50% ABV, and it's got a really elegant blend of grain whiskeys and single malts, and especially this contains a lot of Glenrothes. And I know that because after trying this, sometime down the road, then I came to know what Glenrothes tastes like, and I immediately had a taste memory. And there it is again. Just an amazing, delicious blended Scotch whiskey. Oh boy, I like that. If you haven't tried that, highly recommend it. Give it a try. Maybe that'll go into your whiskey archives. Oh, it's got a nice smoky finish. Delicious. Now, I've also got some whiskeys in here that are one-offs that are impossible to buy now and are bona fide collector's whiskey if you've got a full closed bottle. Of course, they're worthless except for yourself inside the box like this. Although you can trade them with people that you know really well. Now, let me just show you a couple of these very rare whiskeys that I've got in here. The first is from the Edradour Distillery. This is their peated version called Balakin, and that's the 8th release that was done in Sauternes casks. So a fully matured Sauternes Balakin peated Highland single malt Scotch whiskey. And look at that, I've got a little bit left there. Why don't we try a little bit just for fun? Again, we're going back a couple of years into the Whiskey Whistle history here with this one. Now, this has a bit of air in the bottle, so there will be a bit of change that's occurred. The other ones, however, are full, and they'll be exactly the same as I left them when I bottled them. Now, first, let's clean the glass with Balakin. We'll disregard that one. And we'll pour just a little bit in there. And you really don't need that much to go back and taste something. 10 milliliters is actually a very sufficient serving when all you want to do is just have a little taste. Oh, Balakin. Now, I have yet to try the official 10-year-old release. Have you tried it? I'd love to hear from you. This one, by the way, it's 46% ABV, it's unchill filtered, and it's all natural in color. And as a peated Highlander from a very small distillery, boy, it's just like smoky bacon. Even more than that, it's kind of like the leftover charred wood coals after you have cooked bacon on an open fire, and you've got that bacon grease infused wood charcoal at the bottom of the pit. Oops, as I just spilled some, oh my goodness. Well, cheers everyone. Boy, from the palate to the finish, what a bruiser of a peated whiskey. Ooh, it's just so sooty. And that's a good thing. What a long finish, my God. All right, now just one more gem from this box. Oh, now these are all full, so I am not going to be opening these. Here we have Glendronach Revival, the 15-year-old. Now this is probably either 2014 or 2015. Unfortunately, that wasn't written on the bottle, or it was summarily wiped off by the importer. Boy, oh boy. Now, when you do this, one nice thing you can do, you can write down when you've bottled it. You can write down a couple of tasting notes, or something just to remind yourself of what it tasted like to you back then. Oh, I can't wait to get into these. 200 milliliters of Glendronach Revival waiting for me. And as I mentioned, you can trade these with friends. And this is something that happens pretty much worldwide. It's sort of a, what can I call that? Well, it's a real whiskey geek sort of thing to do. As is this, and I'm a whiskey geek. So, hey, join the club. All right, well, let's close up that old archives. Whoops. What do you think of that? Pretty cool, huh? And as I mentioned, this is an ongoing archives. So I've even got whiskeys that I would have reviewed only a few weeks or a couple of months ago. What have we got here? Glenmorangie Astar, the 2017 release. That was my WhiskyWhistle Whisky of the Year for the Deluxe NAS category. Delicious. And some other things. An incredible Glenfarclas. Glenfarclas 2004 cask strength. What a delicious whiskey this is. Now let me just show you the label up close. I don't know if you can see that very well, but I just put a couple of notes in there. Of course, since I have the YouTube channel, I'll have permanent notes forever. Now, one thing about pouring into these little bottles, you want to try to fill it absolutely full. So look at that. I've only got a tiny little bubble in there. Why is that important? Well, it'll prevent oxidation. Furthermore, it'll actually be sturdier for travel or moving in the long run. Think of an air pocket as a possibility of cracking the glass. So those are the recent additions to the WhiskyWhistle Whisky Archives. They need a nice little home, and they will have one very soon. All right, now I'll take you through the process of pouring and labeling your entry into your whiskey archives. Let's start with Evan Williams, the 12-year-old, and I'll show you my label. Now that's just my older label. I don't have my current logo on there. I've called that bottle shares just in case I do want to trade with someone. And I mentioned the distillery, brief nosing notes, tasting notes, finish notes, and other comments there. And cheers in a bunch of different languages. And then I also mentioned that it's for personal consumption only. All right, so let's pour the Evan Williams 12-year-old, something that's not really available. You can get it at the distillery. You can get it in Japan, but otherwise you're going to be paying a lot of money for that one. So I want to make sure that I have a sample of that on hand. You can use a funnel. I've gotten fairly steady at not spilling a drop here. So let's see if I can recreate that perfection here. Doing pretty well. And if you are going to travel or send it, I did spill some. Right on the label, my last label. All right, well, if you are going to send it, I highly recommend filling it as full as possible. That's not the right lid. Here we go. Okay. So fill it pretty full. Put the cap on very carefully. And then you've got yourself, I think, 50 plus milliliters now. And look at that, just a couple of little bubbles in the top there. Pretty much full. Would have been right full had I not spilled. Also on my sheet, my bed sheets. Oh well, shh. All right. Ooh, what a scent. I just love that smell. I'm going to pour myself a little hit of that. There we go. A little bit of Evan Williams 12-year-old. Boy, I haven't got much of that left. I highly recommend this whiskey. All right, so I'll write down on here, Evan Williams, 12-year-old. This one is 50.5%. 50.5 or 101 proof. Other details? Well, I don't have a bottling date in here at all. Nothing mentioned there. But I'm thinking that that is probably pretty current. So I'll just mark down the year that I bottled it. And I purchased that in August of 2017. All right. Then you just put the label on the bottle. And there you have it, my newest addition to the WhiskyWhistle Whisky Archives. That's Evan Williams, 12-year-old, 101 proof, 50.5% ABV. A very worthy member of my archives. And well, we'll put it right over there. That's awaiting its final destination, a nice wooden case with maybe little placards of telling which whiskey that is. It's going to be great. Let's go through one more together, shall we? This one is Canadian Club 20-year-old. Well, it's a Canadian whiskey. And Canadian Club, this is bottled at the Hiram Walker and Sons distillery. And what's interesting about them is that they actually blend their whiskeys before barreling and age it in the barrel blended. So that's quite interesting. Anyway, 20 years old this is. I'm going to try a little bit with you just to taste it together. And if you notice that I've changed the cork, it's true. That's because the original cork, well, it broke and I just barely got it out intact. That was lucky. Okay, let's have a little bit of Canadian Club 20. Ooh, that's pretty good, I'd say. Set that there. When I first tried this, I just thought it just tasted like regular Canadian whiskey. I didn't really notice much of the age. Maybe a little bit more age than, say, your typical Canadian whiskeys of either with no age statement or up to 12 years old. But the more I got through this bottle, the more I realized that this is something special. And it's special for a couple of reasons. One, it's a 20-year-old Canadian whiskey. That's pretty rare. Secondly, this is the original bottling. I believe that this is from 1995. Have a look at that there. There's no way that's the vintage. Absolutely not. That would be the bottling date. All the markers on the bottle tell me so. There's also I only see one bottle like this online. Have a look at it. Pretty interesting. It doesn't have the circle there. It's got this limited edition tag here at the top. And this was obviously for the American market because it's all in English. Now this is 1995 and the bottling number is 029493. All right, well, very cool. We'll have a little taste together. This is one of my favorite whiskeys of late. It tastes like strawberry jam, and you're having that strawberry jam in the vicinity of like a leather factory. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, now I'm going to pour myself 2 of these to keep long term. And we'll be very careful not to spill because I still have to review this one. There we go. Oof. Right to the top. Okay, and the second one. Oh, I spilled a little bit there. There we are. Just enough left to review, and then some, I think. All right, time to cap those. When you pour them this full, you got to put that cap on very carefully.
Is that watertight? Well, it should be.
Oh! On second thought, you better leave a tiny little bit of space in there. Let that be a lesson to me and to you. Oh my God. Oh, that poor whiskey. And I got glass all over the floor. Oh, that was the coolest dumb thing I've ever done, and it's been recorded on YouTube. Great. All right, well, we've got one left, thankfully. I think a little bit of air is best now that I think about it. Okay, so I've got one sample of Canadian Club 20-year-old, and we'll just put the details. All right, now I've put all the details on there, the bottling date and the bottle number. I've also indicated when I opened the bottle and when I bottled the bottle, when I decanted the bottle into the small little sample vial. And there we have it. That is another latest entry for the WhiskyWhistle Whisky Archives. Now, a lot of people out there, including some of my friends, prefer to make an infinity bottle. That's where you mix the last little bit of your bottle into an empty bottle and make a blended whiskey. Personally, I'm a purist and I prefer my Whisky Archives. Why don't you start your own? Just save yourself the last little bit of your bottle, get some small little bottles like here, like mine, and start pouring them and labeling them. It doesn't take very much, and you'll be able to enjoy that for the rest of your life. For me, the coolest thing here is 5 years from now, 10 years from now, I'll be able to go back and taste these whiskeys that I had years ago, and I'll be able to compare them with the current whiskeys of whatever variety that is at that time. So for example, here we have Glendronach 18-year-old Alertis, a nice little sample that I've made for myself, and in a few years' time I'll be able to compare this with the latest release of the Glendronach 18-year-old. So I'm very excited about that. I've got a Taiwanese whiskey, I'll have some Indian whiskey in there, Japanese, It's going to be great, and I think it's going to be something that I will do the rest of my life, and it'll be a lifelong passion, part of my whiskey journey. So let me know what you think about archiving your whiskey. Setting aside a little bit of each bottle for the future. Something you can trade or something you can savor down the road. Oh, and another benefit I forgot to mention about the Whiskey Archive is, by archiving your whiskey at today's prices, you are saving yourself a little bit of money in the future, aren't you? So think about that one. Now go get started on your Whiskey Archives. Preserve your whiskey, save a little bit of money, trade with your friends, and most of all, have some fun with your whiskey. I'd love to hear what bourbons, whiskeys, and scotches you put in your Whiskey Archives, so leave me a comment if that sounds good to you. Thanks for watching the WhiskyWhistle Whisky Archive tutorial. Don't forget to subscribe to WhiskyWhistle right over here, and also click the bell so that you get notified of all of the Whiskey Whistles coming up. Also remember about Patreon, patreon.com/WhiskyWhistle. Get involved, join the team, and get the newsletter. Take care everyone, we'll see you next time. Thanks for watching Whiskey Whistle. Be sure to subscribe, and don't forget to give this video a like, and leave a comment down below. Be sure to stay tuned next time to join me, the host of the show, Mark, as I explore more whiskeys with you. Take care now, and we'll see you next time.